Hello everyone and welcome to the Franchise Show. I hope you're all doing well. This is the show where we get under the hat of all things franchising. And it's a live show. Well, it's live if it's the 26th of February?
May
even. 26th of May 2026. And if it's a very hot day where you are, then you're live with us. And it's live, so you can get involved, and we love you to get involved. So pop in a question, say hello, and join in our conversations. So what do we do each week on the Franchise Show? We take a new topic and a lovely guest. Today is no exception to that. We have a fantastic guest, but before I introduce him to you, we will let you know what we're going to talk about today. So today we are going to be talking about Franchise QSR Operations. And it's a subject that's quite close to my heart. QSRs are something I've been involved in for many years. And operations is just such a big key to that, and I think can make the difference between success and failure in many QSR businesses. So before we get into that, let's get to introducing our wonderful guest and my good friend, David Moffat. David, welcome to the Franchise Show.
Thanks for having me, Harvey. Nice to eventually join you.
Absolutely. We've been trying to get this sorted, I don't know, for about 2 years.
Round about that, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, look, before we sort of get into things today, I think it'd be nice to start off with a little introduction from yourself. A lot of people will know you, of course, but for those who don't, perhaps you could give a little introduction.
Yeah, so obviously we've met a couple of times, but just for everybody else, I am a 36-year veteran of hospitality, worked through kitchens and eventually went front of house, and then sort of the last 15 years I've been involved in high street QSR business launches into the UK from abroad, and specialised mostly in franchising. But I was a on the tools chef right back in my start, and haven't been in any other business apart from hospitality, and I absolutely love it. So
fantastic, great introduction, and similar in a way to me, and I think that's why we get on and talk about hospitality for hours together anyway. I mean, I was a chef as well, and I think once you're in hospitality, it's a bit like franchising. Once you're in that world, it's hard to let it go. It's hard to sort of get into something else. And what was it about hospitality that you loved so much? What started you off in hospitality?
I actually, one of the few people deliberately went into hospitality. I actually wanted to be a butcher originally. And it was when I went along to join up to see what jobs are available, the courses were all full. And someone said, "Oh, we've got a job in a restaurant. Do you want to do that instead?" And I said, "Yeah, okay, fair enough." So yeah, 16 years old, didn't know any better, just sort of went into kitchens and absolutely fell in love with it at that point, and really just, the sort of chaos and the madness of kitchens and being a 16-year-old boy kind of just really went hand in hand with that. So I liked the back of house. I avoided front of house, but eventually was drawn to the front of house. But yeah, it was that. And then, as somebody once said to me, I drive a mean frying pan. So I must have been reasonably good at it.
A real sort of sliding doors moment there, though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because if you had have got in, then life would have gone a different direction. You would have
absolutely
become a butcher. And
absolutely.
I guess there's many moments in life where those sorts of things happen. But it's a nice story as to how you did it. I mean, look, similar to me, although I'm definitely going to say that Fawlty Towers was part of the reason I wanted to get into hospitality, which seems mad because he was terrible at it. But I don't know, there was something about that world of hotels and guests. So yeah, I love that. Great story. Before we get into things today, let's welcome a few people who have joined us here live already. We have the fantastic Johnny Joseph. And Johnny's put hi from a gloomy but lovely land of Los Angeles, and my worldwide headquarters for performing franchisee royalty audits on behalf of my fabulous franchisor friends. Well, Johnny, it's always an absolute pleasure to have you with us, and looking forward to hearing your thoughts on QSR Operations, I'm sure as an auditor, even though you're focused on the royalty, you know, the operations side of things certainly comes into that auditing process. So looking forward to hearing your thoughts, Johnny. We've got the lovely Simon Wise with us. Always good to have Simon with us. He's put hello, franchise friends. So hello to you too, Simon. And looking forward, of course, to hearing your thoughts on all things QSR operations and operations in general. I'm now, the next comment is going to be from Penny, and I'm trying to find Penny's book. Preparation, look at that. It's great to have Penny with us. Penny has been a long-time supporter of the show, and Penny wrote a lovely book all about franchise operations manuals. So it's going to be quite an interesting one for Penny to get involved in. Now, I always like to show a book, but will it be the right way round today? Yes, it will. And if you want to get your ops manuals the right way round, then talk to Penny. Very proud of that advert. And she's also turned it into an AI platform, so please scan that QR code that's on the screen. Penny has put, hello everyone from an unseasonably hot spot in Warwickshire. Yes, it's about 30 degrees where I am here, and I was thinking of not wearing this, but I thought I'd better put it on, but I have got shorts. Yes, it's very hot today. Let's have a look. Who else have we got? We have the lovely Kelly Steinecker. Kelly is a good friend of mine. I did some early podcasts and LinkedIn lives with Kelly, and she's calling in from Phoenix, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure it was Phoenix. And Kelly's put, good morning, y'all. Hopefully I've got the accent right there.
We might need subtitles for the Scottish person on this call.
Johnny Joseph has come back with gloomy Los Angeles, where we call it May Gray. Oh, there you go. Didn't know that. Oh, I'm sorry it's gloomy there. I would have thought Los Angeles feels like it's always going to be warm. But there you go. Maybe not. Anyway, so let's get into things today. And I think it would be good to sort of start by trying to understand what we mean by operations. So David, perhaps you could give us your take on what you feel sits in that category of QSR operations. What elements do we have in here?
Yeah, I mean, our business is QSR. I mean, I was originally restaurants, full service, full dining restaurants, a very long time ago, with operations were very much sort of set in stone. Those were the kind of cornerstones of the business, you know, do this on this day. And that became, you know, kind of the operational standards, I think, for that. But I think operations in nowadays in the modern marketplace and in QSR kind of encapsulate kind of almost everything that we do from the minute the guest interacts with us right through to them leaving. I think from an operational perspective, I think it needs to be kind of all put under the same umbrella and then categorized as we go along. It's kind of anything that I'm a firm believer that any interaction with guests or guests, suppliers, team members, anything can all be categorized in some sort of operational format. And I think that if you look at the business like that, it gives you a very good overview of how your business operates. So it's in the title. So it's interesting to take that kind of step back and a kind of overview of the business and kind of look at it from an operational point of view. Obviously working in QSR and franchising, because you're handing over a business to somebody else, maybe who isn't as experienced or is new to the business or is a multi-brand franchisee, they need all of that aspect of your business to be able to be tangible, to be executed, and to be operational. So if that kind of encapsulates everything, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's interesting to look at it in that way, that think about it from the moment the guest arrives to the moment the guest leaves. And there's probably a little bit even before and after that, you know, that they're having interactions with the business, you know, especially with, you know, online ordering, you know, and ordering via apps, you know, all of that takes a degree of operations as well, even before they get to the store. But I think that's a really interesting and great description of what ops means.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting as well in franchising, because when you have a QSR business, the sort of the ops procedures, the build cards for making various different things, whatever business you're in, they've always been a kind of a core part of it. But when you go into franchising, you have, that's part of that process as well. So
yeah.
QSR and franchising almost doubles down on procedures and ops. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why they're so popular and successful.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, that's why, I mean, I was a franchise operations manager out in the field for many years as well. And we were always, operation was part of our title. But we weren't just going in to look at the kind of how, you know, the guest journey or any of those kind of parts of the business, or whether they were doing things correctly. Operations covered P&Ls that covered, you know, guest acquisition, you know, feedback, everything that was there. Operations kind of covered that full market suite. So we were expected as operations managers and operations executives at any of these brands to be able to know the business inside out. And again, like a franchisee, we had to understand that business and be able to operate it without people, you know, by ourselves. So, I mean, that's how I always learned, you know, that's one of the reasons why I always work inside a business before I start making any critical changes to it. So I need to understand the operations of that business. So
absolutely, we're definitely going to get onto that actually, because one of the next questions I was going to ask you is sort of where do you start when you're looking at a business? But before we do, let's make sure we recognize a few more people that have joined us here live.
I've got a couple of questions as well come up, so
excellent. Well, we're going to get to those as well, definitely. Well, we've got the lovely Neil Newman from Gather. Great to have you with us, Neil. Neil is, as you know, Harvey is a long-term operations director. I'm very keen to hear about this. Well, as are we all, and looking forward to hearing your thoughts, Neil, as we go along and as we get into this conversation. We have got a couple of questions now, one from Johnny and one from Simon. So I'm going to let you pick, David. Just give me a Johnny or a Simon. You tell me.
Let's go with Simon.
Simon, let's have a look. So Simon has put, how does operational excellence translate and influence revenue growth and profitability in QSR? Great question, Simon.
Yeah, really good question. As what we were talking about earlier on there, I think that understanding the numbers and understanding being able to influence the numbers by using operational standards is something that we see a lack of in our business at the moment. Excuse me, everything is numbers driven now, you know. Every aspect of our business, you know, number of people coming through the door. So if operational excellence, if our teams that are out in the field, if they're following the steps and using those operational tools that we've got, you know, we've got somebody on who writes operations manuals, that's part of it. You know, that's only a small part of the business, but it's a major cog in that wheel. So if you've got your operational excellence standards and you understand them, then that drives revenue growth and profitability across the board. You know, I mean, everything is interlinked in our business. And I think we had, over the last 20 years, I've noticed people who have restaurant businesses and QSR businesses were very much front of house, back of house. And then you had to sort of split off in between the two of those. The operational standards that we ran front of house and then ran in the kitchens were completely different aspects of each other. I think that's now become just one entity.
Yeah, I think I haven't thought about it like that, but I think you're absolutely right. They've blended a lot more together, haven't they?
With the acquisition of Americanized open plan kitchens coming over as well, that kind of forced that thing, you know, because if you look at the operations that you've got coming into your business, I always look at the operational excellence of your business starting 3 miles away from your restaurant, because we're now on a platform. So your restaurant starts 3 miles away from your location, and you've got to control all the operational steps from the minute those people log on to a delivery partner to the minute the driver comes back to your door and everything in between. So I think that's definitely, and excellence is a subjective word, I think. I know we use it as a term in our business, but I think, you know, it should be operational execution. You know, as long as you execute something well and consistently and repeat it, then it becomes, you know, excellence can be strived for, but consistency is everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you made a really interesting point about understanding those numbers and translating things. A lot of people, franchisees and people within the QSR industry don't necessarily understand a P&L to the point where they look at it and they don't see numbers anymore. They see an opportunity for improvement within one operational area of a business, or they they see the problem, they see a solution, and they see an operational way of solving that.
Yeah.
And that comes from this boring list of numbers that's on this P&L or on this budget or whatever it might be, but it tells a story.
I love a P&L.
Well, that's it. And look, you should, and franchisees should, and franchisors should, and anybody in QSRs should, because I always talk about happy, successful franchisees, and that success part comes from that P&L being right and people understanding it, right? You know, we've got the ability, the software, to be generating these things on a hourly basis if we wanted them, right?
Yeah.
We can see what's happening in our businesses. We don't have to wait 3 months. We certainly don't have to wait until our accountants come back and say, this is what happened last year. You know, we need to know what happened now and what's likely to happen next week or tomorrow or next month or next year.
Yeah, just excuse me, just on that. When you're looking at that P&L from an operational perspective, you, again, because everything has become more blended and everybody, like a good GM these days should be able to understand all lines of a P&L not only from an operational point of view or an execution point of view, but how that looks, because we have got data now. So how does that look today, tomorrow? I worked with a lot of senior operations guys, directors, finance directors, who would look at the top line and the bottom line, and that was it, and everything in the middle was just noise. Whereas now, when I sit down with anybody that I'm working with as a client, I go sit and go, right, let's look at the middle bit, and the middle bit is where operations live. It's staff costs, it's guest retention, spend per head, you know, and you can take your operational, we'll continue to call it operational excellence, but those are the areas where it's not always about turnover. You know, turnover is important, but what gets to the bottom line is hugely important. I mean, we all know restaurants that turn over, you know, 70, 80,000 a week, some in London, and still lose money.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's an old phrase about that, isn't there? You know, turnover's vanity, isn't it? Profit's sanity. Yeah. Cash is king. I'm not sure about that. Cash flow.
Cash flow is king now because it's not real money anymore.
No one has any folding anymore, do they?
Fold, yes.
That's it. Well, let's have a look. Great comment as well, Simon. Thanks so much for that.
Thanks,
really like that. We're definitely going to get to the question that I was going to ask you as well, but I want to have a look at what Johnny's got to say, and Penny as well. But we are going to look at what steps you take when you get to a restaurant or a QSR and you're looking at their ops. But let's have a look first of all. Let's see Johnny here. Johnny has put, I was fortunate enough to be COO of a branded fried chicken QSR marketing partner during the pandemic in 2021 time. QSR really expanded in a huge way as sit-down restaurants could not be in business. Has QSR maintained its restaurant market share since then? And look, this is a great question, Johnny, as well, because this is about how we adapt and how QSRs can be flexible as well, isn't it? You know, and have we gone back to that pre-pandemic phase, or have things just changed and we'll move forward from where they're at?
I think we were discussing this before we came online as well, was I think QSR stood on its own pre-pandemic. You know, it was the McDonald's, the Burger Kings, the KFCs of this world. That's where it was sitting. But I think that when we all took over running QSR businesses properly, you know, like in the pandemic, we were forced to become 100% QSR. You know, there was no, you only had drivers to interact with, so there was no guest care, there was no, you know, steps of service, there was none of those things were hugely important at that point. But I think that some QSRs elevated themselves slightly to make them, to obviously to try and get the quality of the restaurant product into a box and send it to your house. Some did it well, some didn't do it. I was working for German Doner Kebab during that period, so we were still opening. I think we opened 32 restaurants during the pandemic, so it was a bit of a challenge. But we hadn't done deliveries before that point.
Okay,
we were a dine-in restaurant concept, and we were driving to be, a kebab sit-in, enjoy dinner. But we pivoted. We came out the other side of that. We became what was sort of sits in this what they call QSR Plus, which is taking the quick service restaurant, but giving it a more restaurant table service kind of feel about it. So people were still ordering on apps, people were still ordering on the counter, but we were bringing the food to them. So there was still guest interaction. And I think looking at the high street now, and I was in London last week, it seems to be the way that it's gone. So you've got quick service restaurants with tables and chairs in them, and there's a certain level of restaurantism to the, that's not even a real word, but yeah, you know what I mean, restaurantism to
I'll take that word.
to all aspects of it. And I think that both sides of the business, QSR learned from restaurants on how to create guest care, maybe at arm's length. And I think that vice versa, restaurants learned a lot from QSR.
Yeah.
And I
think it's really interesting that definition of QSR is shifting around. You know, there was fast casual dining, QSR restaurants, fine dining, you know, and now QSR plus, you know, and it's because the trends and what people want from an experience of eating food is a constantly moving thing.
Yeah.
So they all have to try and keep up with that. But yeah, look, great question. Thanks for that, Johnny. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at this one from Penny. Penny's just put, I've just returned from Kosovo, having delivered a leadership lecture and workshop. The objective was to get everyone documenting one critical SOP for use the next working day. QSR was heavily represented and there was a massive intent to scale. All were extremely focused on compliance when opening additional outlets. Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. What do you make of this one, David?
So documenting is hugely important. I mean, I'm of the theory, if it isn't written down, it doesn't happen. So, but documentation has to be done in a certain way that it has a subjective outcome. So, you know, if it's learning and development, you know, it should be part of a journey where people do that. If it's operations, it should be part of the daily steps. You don't want to get bogged down under too much paperwork because then it becomes a ticky box exercise. When you're taking it, when you're doing scale ups, especially of small restaurant groups, 2 or 3 sites, they're either stepping into franchise or they're expanding up to 10, 15 stores. You have to have that control in place where my old head chef used to say to me, if you get hit by a bus on the way to work, does everybody know how to do your job? So we're using paperwork to do that, but we have to be, what we don't want is a big dusty ops manual sitting on top of a walk-in fridge, which we've all seen in our trade. You know, it has to be interactive, it has to be relevant, and it has to be usable on a daily basis.
And I know, and Penny's been on this many times, and she's an absolute advocate of that. I mean, that's why she created a platform, but to try and make it interactive, to try and make it usable, little bite-sized things. I mean, what I liked about Penny's comment there, and I'll put it back up, but it was, I quite like that you get sort of one critical SOP.
Yeah,
I like that because it's a manageable little thing. You know, and if you can make an improvement on one standard operating procedure, just that one thing, you take that away and you go, okay, we're going to do that to whatever it might be. You can manage that, can't you? You know, it's not, like you say, it's not some great big dusty ops manual that no one ever looks at and was given 5 years ago.
Yeah, you're right. That's the thing about bite size is the thing. I was never a fan of the gamification of operations and training when it came out a couple of years ago, when everybody was like, it was all videos and interactive stuff, because I think what happened is we changed operations, and operations managers changed operations to suit the audience as opposed to teaching the skill that we had, you know, so that, you know, we were dumbifying the importance of each individual item by making it like into, you know, interactive. Whereas I think now that's come back round again. And as Penny said, that's right. Just take one small aspect and give it to the person who's responsible for that role. And if they can improve that by 1%, then it's, you know, they've made a massive thing. It's like the old adage, if you can move 1% every single day, by the end of the week, you've created something new. So, you know,
that's really important. And I think that brings us nicely round to now talking about that process of operational improvements and what you do when you come in. We'll get to Simon's question first, because that's in the same sort of area. So let's have a quick look at what Simon's put here. Simon has put, you were looking to invest in QSR franchise and have the P&L in front of you. Where do you look first? What would set alarms bells ringing? apart from losing money, of course.
Apart from losing money.
Yeah,
you're allowed to lose money if you're in your development stage, because that is a cost that you build into there. So if you're building a restaurant brand, it's lovely to make money in the first 6 months, but if you don't, then it needs to be aware of that. So
yeah, I mean, look, you said something that was really interesting earlier. You were talking there about staff costs. You were talking there about costs of goods, wastage. These are very relevant things when you're looking at that P&L. I think in this scenario, we're talking about, rather than when you take, a US franchise that's coming to the UK and they've got an expansion plan, you might know a little bit about that.
A little bit about that.
But when they've got an expansion plan, you're absolutely right. Those first few sites, there may well be a built-in loss for a period of time that everyone's aware of. No surprises there, and that's fine. But as long as that's part of the plan. But I think here, let's imagine, I don't know, let's imagine something that's been going a little bit of time, got a fair few sites, and you're looking at that. You've got the P&L. I think that the staff and the costs of goods are good places to look.
They are good places to start, but what you're looking for is, if you've got a 12-month P&L in front of you, then staff costs are always going to vary. It's like we were saying earlier on. I never judge. You judge a business when you're an operator in a business. Say you're a general manager in a business. You look at that business live, and you can only deal with what's happening there. If you're an operations manager, you're looking at a group of restaurants over 2 or 3 days. You're not reacting to something that happened yesterday. You're working as part of that. If you're an operations director, you're looking at long term. Are you meeting your targets? I think if you look at this in the same aspect. So if I sit down, you give me a P&L and say, David, go and have a quick look through this and see what you think. Yes, let's look at turnover as the top one, because obviously making money is, taking money is good. Filter down to the staff costs, then filter down to cost of sales. If that cost of sales is going up and down, then you need to understand from an operational perspective is why that's going up and down. Now, is that wastage? Is that invoicing issues? Is it suppliers adding costs as they go along? Is it trends of what sells on what days? And then the same with the staff costs. You can look at the staff costs when you're there as well. So if the staff costs on Monday, if you look at, if I've got 27% for my staff costs and it's 54% on a Monday, but it's 12% on a Friday because I've got loads of customers coming through the door, I would do that for the same over a month period, a 12-month period. I would look at those costs. If all those costs have got a consistency to them, then great. If they don't have a consistency to them, then you would start digging down into the numbers. Is that training? Is it supplier issues? Is it staffing issues? Is it footfall issues? Is it marketing? You get a lot from that one line of cost. And then flip that on its head. One of the popular conversations I have all the time on a P&L is people go, we get financial people who come in and just say, right, this is your wage cost across the board every single day. But they don't take into account if I spent a little bit more money on a Monday and gave slightly better service on a Monday instead of having one team member on, that's actually the value that adds to that P&L is huge. So, on a Friday and Saturday night, you're packed. It doesn't make any difference, or not so much Friday now, but and then working your way down that P&L and understanding where everything's going. Consumables is one that everyone forgets about. Everyone talks about blue roll, but we still go into restaurants and everybody's still streaming 3 tons of blue roll out. Put it in a holder, cut it down to 2 sheets, still works. And it doesn't sound like a lot. I had a head chef who used to shout at me for using napkins to clean the coffee machine, and I was like, yeah, but they cost like 0.02 pence. He said, yeah, you do that every single day for like a year and it costs this amount. I didn't understand that until I owned my own restaurant and went, how much am I paying for napkins a year?
So, I remember a similar thing years ago. I was selling toasters, bun toasters, and the business they used to just put them under the grill to toast the buns, and the amount they were burning, because we all know, like, bread, you've only got to just sort of look away for a moment and bread's burnt, isn't it? And it was tens of thousands of pounds that they were throwing away of these burnt burger buns, and if one kind of slipped through, it completely spoils the service you're going to get. Great question. Let's have a look. We've got a good one coming up from Jay. Before we get into that one, because I keep saying we're going to do this, and then lovely questions come in, and I do want to get to everyone's questions. But look, I'm going to say this, and we're about halfway through today anyway. So if you have just joined us, this is the Franchise Show. Today we are talking about QSR, franchise operations, and we've got the lovely David Moffat talking about that with us. So let's now picture you've been asked to come into a business and sort out their operations. And we're going to do a couple of things here. Let's look at a brand new startup, and let's look at one that's been going for a while. Let's start with a startup. Let's think about now someone's just got their QSR business underway. Maybe they've got a couple of sites they own and they're just starting to franchise it. How would you guide them on the ops side of things? Where would you start?
I always go into this is what I say. The best operations is the ones that the guests don't see. So if I walk into the business and I get as a guest and I see everything, so I always walk in as a guest first, preferably if they don't know me. So I walk in as a guest and see what the overall flow of the teams, the menu style, the service. I look at that as my kind of like operational guide. Obviously, I look at it from an operator's point of view, but I try to act like a customer so that I can see it, because you can see a lot from the operations of what's happening with operations just by viewing what's going on. I mean, the general public sometimes don't see it because, I'm still obsessed with light bulbs, but that's my old operations director's fault. I can't go anywhere. But again, it's like I will look at that, and then I'll introduce myself. I'll go and have a look at the back of house. I'll talk to the team. I'll talk to the managers and get that kind of, because the managers will tell you sometimes what you want to hear. The franchisees and the owners will definitely tell you what you want to hear, but the team members don't. They'll tell you how it runs, and then get feedback from them. So you can have a look at that. You've got to be there from morning to night. I'm not suggesting you go in at 8 and leave at 3 in the morning, but come in the morning, come in the evening, come on a Friday night and have a look and see what's going on. And you
learn so much, don't you, just by being there, looking, observing.
Yeah, just being there and turning up at 11 o'clock on a Friday night is an eye opener in any hospitality business. So if I work away a lot, so I'm based in Scotland, but I do spend a lot of time in London. What am I going to do? Sit in my room? No, I'll go out and walk the streets and go into one of my businesses that I'm helping out and see what it looks like at 9:30. Have a look at the ops, because they've been following the ops all day because they know their boss is there. But as soon as everybody disappears, so they're still using the same operational processes, steps of service, SOPs. 9 times out of 10, usually not.
No, they're not. And look, I remember this from designing kitchens as well. And if you make the right way also the easiest way, the most convenient way, then it tends to be easier to get people to follow a process. If it's quite tricky to get to or to follow whatever standard operating process you've got, and there is an easier way to do it, people will naturally, because it's repetitive.
Yeah.
People have to, if they're in QSR and they're making a burger or they're doing whatever they're doing the same thing hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of times. So they find a way to get it easier, because that's human nature, isn't it?
But that's why you should look at your team as well and see what they're doing, because guaranteed if they've come up with a better way of doing it that still meets all your expectations, then why are we not using that?
And they're going to have great ideas as well, because they're doing it all day.
Every day.
And therefore, like you say, why not go within your team to find those great ideas? Do there is a house opposite that isn't the sun coming in, that's the sun is over there. It's shining in a window. It's blinding me here. Oh, well, that aside, let's have a quick look at what Jay's got to say. Great to have you with us, Jay, as well. Jay's put service times and service style normally signpost me as to where a concept sits on the restaurant's spectrum.
Yes.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. Yeah, that's an interesting take on it, isn't it?
There's an interesting trend starting now, which we've seen a few restaurants in Glasgow do it, and lots in London over last week when I was down, is the small plates, but instead of it being I did a lot of stuff on LinkedIn about breaking the starter, main course, dessert side order version of a menu. And again, that came from QSR, where you can order absolutely anything at any point, doesn't matter what it is. It's interesting to see now that there are restaurants with multiple things on the menu, small plates, main course styles, but smaller dishes. And because there's no structure to it, the stuff just arrives whenever. So, and I like that. I really do like that as a business. But where do we classify that? Do you know, I think back to the old Latasca days when I used to run Latascas, and we brought everything out at once. So you could have 25, 30 plates coming out piled up on top of the table. Whereas now you've got service style where, there's an Italian restaurant in Glasgow just opened, huge place. And, you get you get your miniature pizza first, and then you get your side order, then you get your meatballs, some pasta comes, because it's all coming from different parts of the kitchen. But it works.
It does work, actually, and I've experienced this sort of small plate thing. It's very social as well. So
yes.
It works. It creates a nice environment. It takes pressure off a kitchen as well, because you get a little bit of food. Some of that hunger is going to go. You get a little bit more. It keeps the interest level up as well. So yeah, I really like that.
Yeah. Again, similar to that, I was in Sticks and Sushi on a couple of weeks ago, and that's the service that they run, and it works really well. And the thing I got from it was the amount of interaction with the team members was elevated through the roof. So that guest experience was phenomenally good, because you had somebody taking your order, somebody explaining your drink, somebody explaining your food to you, clearing plates as you go along, because you just don't have the physical space to have the dinner for two there. But I liked it because I felt like it was more of a dining experience. So I think, from Jay's question, I think it's definitely, I think the signposts have become slightly pointing in different directions. And I think it's exciting to see where it goes in this side of the business. I mean, fine dining will always be fine dining, and you pay for that experience as part of that. It's part of a journey. But I think in the general QSR mid-range restaurants, I think there's some really interesting, exciting changes coming along.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too. What we got Simon that's come back with one sheet is enough for me.
He's on Blue Roll again.
Blue Roll, we're back to Blue Roll. Our joint friend Matt Smith put a very amusing post on LinkedIn recently, which was say you're in hospitality without saying you're in hospitality. Was it yourself that came up with? It was somebody did. I can't remember who did now, but someone said D10 and Blue Roll, or D2 and Blue Roll. Yeah.
D10 and Blue Roll. That's all you need to say, because that actually came from, just a quick one on that. That came from, I was in a restaurant in London one night, and I'm sitting there having a drink, and the guy on the table next to me knocked over his drink. And instead of going, "Can I get a cloth for that?" he shouted to the waiter, "Can I get some D10 and some Blue Roll?" And I went, "You work in hospitality?" And I started chatting to him, and he went, "Yeah, I work in a restaurant in the corner." It's something that we all know.
But look, but the Blue Roll thing was a really interesting one, because sometimes what seems like a very small cost in that P&L, in that, or what seems like a very small part of a ops procedure. I remember helping out a burger brand years ago, and it was just where they kept their tongs, right, that saved about 12 seconds of make time on a burger.
Yeah.
Because they were walking about 4 steps to get them, and then walking back to do what they had to do, and then walking back and putting them there. For some bizarre reason, it had just been the way it had been.
It's something we lost. I mean, when I first started in the early 90s, when I started, we used to still do time and motion studies in kitchens, for when we were chefs. How many steps. I had worked in a kitchen where we had the tiles and the different colored tiles on the floor, and you were allocated your tiles, and that's as far as you got. You had 3 tiles to the left, 3 tiles to the right. That's as far as you went. And if you're on desserts, you didn't move at all. You had 2 tiles. That was enough for your shoes, and that was it. But it was interesting that I still use that methodology now. We used to justify it for marketing departments going, "Oh, we're going to make these spring rolls for you, and they're really cheap and we can give them out." But it was using 90,000 hours a year across 150 restaurants. You're thinking, you just outstripped that out of the P&L. For what we were saving in wastage, we should have just thrown it in the bin, because it cost us more in labor in order to be able to do it.
Yeah, that's it. You've got to. People think about the costs of ingredients, and they think about using ingredients, using one SKU or one ingredient item across several menu items. But I don't think it's thought about quite so much about that operational part. How long does it take to make this versus this?
Mm-hmm.
And and how much can we charge someone for? How much is someone going to pay for this versus this?
Yeah, so many people just go, oh, I want to make, I want to make my 65% profit on it, so they just times it by 3.5. That's it, and that's how they do the menu pricing. And you think, well, that's actually taking a team member off the floor for an entire day to make them. So actually, with the minimum wage going up and the cost of staffing going up, that's a huge cost now, and you have to build that cost into your menu building. Your menu architecture has to reflect that.
Definitely. I think it would be quite good for the last part. We've got about 5 minutes left. It'd be quite good to now look at the it goes, time flies. But it'd be quite good to look at sort of the future of operations, the future of labor, management, wastage and things. I've seen everything from fully automated kitchens to, I don't know, vending machines and all this sort of thing. I wonder where it's going to go and how our wonderful people in QSR hospitality, how they're going to be involved in it.
I think because it ties into that last question sort of from the LinkedIn user. So said that, but I think that hospitality is about people. It always will be about people. I think we need to, I'm all for paying staff what they're worth. And I'm not, the additional costs that we're seeing coming in from the government, from VAT, suppliers, we have to burden that, unfortunately. But what we shouldn't do is we shouldn't cut our people, because people are hospitality.
I completely agree with you.
If you create people with less, we've all got less money to spend now. We're not going out 2-3 times a night because it was cheap to eat out. It's more expensive to eat out. People are still eating out. They just want a better experience, and they're willing to pay for a better experience if they're getting it. So instead of it, if I'll still spend 20 quid to go out for some drinks and some snacks, as long as I'm not going to give you 20 quid just to have food thrown at me or have to wave my waiter down. And I think automation, unfortunately, automation is great when it comes to menu boards, just, all that digital aspect of business, the way you can order. Yes, you can cut team members for that. But when it comes to actually physically getting your food and getting that feedback live, it needs to be there,
And also for me, hospitality was about the joy that you get from giving somebody a great experience, whether that's cooking someone a wonderful meal or serving them and it's their birthday or something like that. And you get something from hospitality as a person. And I think maybe it can be a redeployment of our great hospitality people.
Yeah, I think
rather than them cleaning a fryer, they can be there talking to the people in the restaurant and improving that experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if people are going out for fuel to eat, and they go to McDonald's, you grab a cheap burger, it's quick, it's easy, you're in and out, you don't have to speak to anybody. And a lot of the young ones do that because the young ones don't talk to people anymore. But if you're going out for an experience, then that's where that money needs to be spent. I think, unfortunately, most businesses will just flatline that across there and say, right, this is the number. So we can automate a lot of things as we go on. Let's automate things like prep, what we're buying in. You can buy some phenomenal products in now, which we never had in the past. High quality ingredients, which are pre-prepped when they come in. If you want to save money, do that. Look at these options, look at your supply chain, look at all these things. Automate those things, automate your ordering. Wastage, if you're buying in products, then you can control wastage better, which means that you need a slightly lower skill set in the kitchen. If that's what's necessary to be able to run a business, as long as the quality of the product coming out of the kitchen is good, how you get to there is entirely up to the operator.
Yeah, and the lowering of skill set, I think this is an interesting one because it can have a lot of negative connotations, but actually in a way what you're trying to do is to create flexibility within the industry, not just for operators, not just for franchisors and franchisees, but also for the people working in hospitality, because they want that flexibility. They want to be able to not spend weeks trying to learn it, just go in, earn some money. A lot of times it's while you're at university, there's a lot of fantastic people that are doing amazing work in hospitality while they're learning to do something else, and therefore it should be made simple for them.
That comes back. One of the biggest things, and was one of the conversations I was having with UK hospitality today, was we need to make hospitality a career and not make it a job that you do at university. But that's a whole different show.
It is. I'm going to write that down as a topic, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And there's other ones as well
Yeah.
that applies to.
That's going to be a title of a book someday. Will be, you know, what are you going to do when you get a proper job? Because that's why I get asked that now at the age of 52. I get asked that all the time. What are you going to do when you get a proper job? I'm like, I don't know.
I'm still thinking about it. Yeah, I'm still thinking about what I'm going to do. But look, that's a really good point, and I think yeah, I definitely have to have a chat about that. Well, look, we have come to the end of the first part of today's show, so I'd like to thank everyone who's been with us live today, everyone who's going to watch this in the future. You are absolutely what makes this special. You are the producers, the directors, and our conversation would have gone a different way if it wasn't for you being here. So thanks for adding such great value to the show today. And of course, I'd like to thank David for his time and his insights into Franchise QSR Operations. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Well, look, we are now, this is the part of the show where the camera will go off for a little bit because you're not allowed to see me without wearing a hat, although sometimes I forget to turn the camera off. And look at this beauty.
Nice.
Now, of course, this hat was made for me by Paul Murphy. And if you would like to get one made, then scan that QR code and you can get yourself a lovely hat. Now, this is also the part of the show where we stop talking about QSR and franchise for a little bit, and we find out a little bit about David. Also, it's the part of the show where, if he wishes, he can get his own back on me.
That would be nice.
First of all, let me ask you, and you can choose any of these things. So have you ever met anyone famous, and have you got a story attached to that? Have you got some sort of claim to fame, or let's say an unusual hobby? Any of those you can choose.
Famous people, no. I have met a lot of famous people as I go along, so I'm not going to go down that road. Hobbies are difficult in our trade. You know, we're pretty much, you know,
not a lot of time for hobbies.
Not a lot of time for hobbies, you know, and I'm not a football fan, so unfortunately does that. But I am. There's people who know me, and a few people are on this that know me. I'm a big fan of tattooing, so I may look like a responsible, smart individual in this cert, but trust me, I've got 1/3 of my body tattooed.
Oh, and what's your favourite one?
It's hospitality related, so I have on my inside arm the very last line from Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential. So things got broken, things got lost, but I wouldn't have missed it for the world.
I like that. That will do, absolutely.
So that's I look at that every time I remember why I'm in hospitality.
That's great. And yeah, I haven't got any tattoos. I was going to have one, but for me, it was always about what do you have on your body that's going to be there for the rest of your life. No matter what way you go, what are you going to, what statement are you going to agree with in 40 years time when your life is completely different? And I think I always struggled with choosing that, but I guess when you've got like a canvas of your whole body, you can just choose lots of different things.
You just use lots of things. Yeah. So yeah. But the thing, I didn't start until I was in my 30s. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
Midlife crisis started early in my house.
Did you have a tattoo of a motorbike or jet?
No. It was all very, very nondescript for a very long time, and then we did get a bit of Anthony Bourdain on there. I don't have a picture of a knife on me anyway because I used to be a chef. So.
Very good. Excellent. Well, look, I promised you could get your own back on me, and I'm a man of my word. So you can now, if you wish, ask me any question you like, and I don't know what it's going to be. So there you go.
Oh, I'm going to ask a good question. Of all the times that I've met you out and about and in real life, what is the most surprising thing that you find when we're meeting people like me and meeting Simon and everybody else when you're at the franchise shows and things like that? What is
It's a good question.
What makes you come up to us? Because you just randomly approached me one day.
I'm naturally nosy. Look, I think what surprises me, and probably the reason I do it, is because I'm curious. It's the reason I do this. So I think what surprises me is every time I have a conversation with somebody, I get something new from that conversation. And look, I love talking to people and listening to people. So And I think in my job, I'm used to going up to people and them looking at me as if to say, well, what are you doing here? Trying to sell me this or sell me that or wherever it is. So I'm kind of used to that. But yeah, I think what surprises me is you can always, every single person has got a story. Every single person in the world has got something to add, something interesting to say. And I think if you ask that second question, someone once said that to me and I like that, you can discover quite a lot. So I'd say that. Well, there you go. Like that question. We have now come to the end of today's episode. So again, I'd like to thank everyone who's with us here live today. I'd love to thank David for his time. You're an absolute legend, David.
Thank you.
And it leaves me to say what's going to go on next week. Next week, we are going to be talking about marketing in some sort of way. And we're going to have a couple of guests on for that, but I will reveal more as we get closer to that. Not that I haven't sorted it out yet or anything like that, but please join us next week on the Franchise Show. Always a Tuesday, always 5:15 GMT or 12:15 EST if you're in that bit of America. But until next time, my fine friends, take very good care and see you next time. Cheerio.